All right, here we go. Grace, here's another video for you. It is clearly some radically different conditions. And I thought I would use this opportunity. Pretty slippery, huh? Oh my gosh, you're almost there. Kinda. You can do it. Yeah, it's warm. Clearly sunny. The freezing level is like way up there. And I am doing my final training day. This time I am keeping my heart rate below 135, 140. But a little slower. Last time when I finished our conversation, I checked and it was 155, which is definitely out of program. So I'm going slower. And there's people still in tennis shoes and no sunglasses and all that kind of thing. So I'll be at that soon. But anyway, I wanted to start a practice run, or possibly I'll just use it because who knows, with a practice run of the introduction to my series on chronic pain. So, for example, I'd have to start with a little intro. Hi, this is Chris Ferris, and this is my series on chronic pain, or something like that. It's been a bit of a challenge to get started, primarily because of the complex and circular nature of what chronic pain really is, as you know. And therefore, I could start anywhere, and it's going to be confusing. And will remain confusing for a long time. Yeah, there's a lot of things I could start with. I could start with the fact that I actually have chronic pain and tell the story of how I came about to have it and what I'm doing with it. I mean, why I'm on Mount Rainier right now. I could start with some neurophysiology and talk about, you know, the mechanics of pain, what pain really is, and how the feedback loop turns into chronic pain. You know, just a million different places to start. Parasympathetic nervous system versus the sympathetic. The idea of threat to the organism, that's kind of a critical topic. Yeah, as usual, my mind goes in a lot of different directions. A big part of me just wants to start off being super sympathetic to anybody who actually has chronic pain, because honestly, and my experience bears it out, most people don't really have a sense of what chronic pain is, and they attempt to treat the pain as though it's an injury, and they often explore every possible Western and Eastern tradition to address the supposed underlying symptoms, causes, and like me, go through things like MRIs and just it's crazy stuff, looking for the cause, the reason, and therefore a diagnosis. And ultimately, many people end up with their doctor shrugging and saying, let's just call it fibromyalgia because it sounds official, and then they'll have a diagnosis, and then that'll at least make them feel a little better that they have something that's, you know, got an official name. But that doesn't really help. But anyway, yeah, it's hard to know where to start. Honestly, I guess I'm going to take this first attempt. I'm going to start with sympathy for those who are suffering. I definitely suffered a lot, and a lot of the suffering was caused by the anxiety of the unknown and the fear of there being something terribly, terribly wrong with my neck. And it was so strong and powerful that it made me not want to do things like exercise, go out, move, for fear that if I might kick something off and it would hurt. And if it hurt, therefore it was dangerous and was a threat, so avoid it. And it's not fun being afraid and fearing that there is something terribly wrong with you that nobody can figure out or fix. And that is part of the root of how it becomes a feedback loop and therefore becomes chronic. But in the course of my journey, having nearly exhausted every palliative and investigatory approach, the pain doctor that I was seeing finally said, maybe now's the time to refer you to the chronic pain clinic. Well, I laughed. I'd gone through enough to have a sense that if the answer were my pain is neuroplastic, which I'll explain, then that is actually relief, because essentially I can reprogram the, hence plastic, I can reprogram the problem without having to worry about structural issues that needed to be addressed. But it took a very long time to get there. And honestly, I feel like my pain doctor at the time was reluctant to release me as a patient to the clinic because he's making a lot of money off of me. Anyway, I suppose that I should, in the course of introducing myself, mention while I am talking a lot about chronic pain, and I sound like I know what I'm talking about, I am not a medical professional. I do not have a degree. I do not have a practice. I do not have a clinic. I'm not a diagnostician. And so the purpose of recording this is not to provide anybody with a path or a cure. So got that really, really clear. The other caveat that I want to throw in there, there's probably a bunch more, but this one is important. If anybody who you, Grace, and I might share this with feels as though I have said something interesting that sparks a sense of recognition or curiosity in anyone else about their own chronic pain or the chronic pain of somebody that they know, then they should write it down and or remember the point in the course of this video and share it with their actual doctor or their pain doctor and use that as the basis of a conversation with them. Because, again, I'm not a doctor. I think my purpose here is making sure there's nobody behind me. Doing all right. Let's do a little panorama here. That's Mount Rainier. And I am training to go to that summit. Really like to get up there. And 3 weeks from today, I will have summited, or will be at the summit, or will have turned back. And yeah, I still have chronic neck pain. So the purpose of this is to talk about my actual experiences, and more particularly what I've learned and what I've synthesized from it. Hi there, how are you guys? And my background, which has led me to, hey, how are you doing? Hi. Has led me to these analyses and theories and opinions and perspectives. I studied cognitive science. I have a degree in cognitive science, which is a combination of neurophysiology and behavior psychology, and all kinds of things. And while I did earn that degree quite a long time ago, it has been a fascination of mine. And so I have embraced the study and exploration of what are the neurological, neurochemical, neurophysiological pathways that lead to this state of chronic pain, in an effort to figure out what is the way to downregulate this feedback loop. And I've learned a ton, and I want to talk about it. And in fact, in 2022, August of 2022, I finally took my place in the 4-week structured functional restoration clinic at Swedish Hospital in Seattle, where I basically took 4 weeks off of work and worked with 4 chronic pain specialists who in their specialties focused in pain psychology, pain physical therapy, pain occupational therapy, and pain relaxation therapy, from an extremely academic as opposed to a hands-on standpoint, where we explored, practiced, and learned about the current state of knowledge, at least of 2022, and basically it's not changing fast at this point, about what chronic pain really is and what one can do about it, which started me down an even more academic and practical path to learn more and apply it to my own life in an effort to assuage my pain, calm myself down, and honestly find a way to become active in the real world again. Because at that point, I was paralyzed almost, not paralyzed, I mean, let's take that back. I meant that figuratively, emotionally paralyzed. It was a frightening state. Worried, concerned, and I'd stopped training, I used to run competitively, even in this advanced stage of mine, and I stopped running, I stopped exercising, and spent a lot of time resting, hoping that that would help. And honestly, none of those things did anything except for contribute to the feedback loop that is what defines the genesis, development, and ultimately, I'm not out of breath, I'm trying to look for the right word, the chronicness, the establishment, the enshrinement in the body's nervous system of being in chronic pain in a way that essentially takes over one's identity and becomes so prevalent that the thought of pain is almost constantly invasive and therefore top of mind. So, which takes me back to the sympathy thing. It's a terrible place to be, and while they've recently come up with some super cool technology that allows you to get stuck into an MRI and functional MRI, and they could see whether or not you are actually experiencing pain based on what parts of your brain are lighting up. It's like, yeah, I'm in pain, but nobody else is in pain with me, and no one else understands this experience. And honestly, pain is terrifying. That's one of the topics I'd like to talk about over the course of this series, is actually, what pain is and how it serves the system and why it's really important, and how it fluctuates, and how that's, here we go, right deep into the loop, how it's part of the sympathetic nervous system, and why it's critical for self-protection, and how it can get into a spiral loop. Anyway, that's a bit of a overview. It's a bit of an apology for not really knowing where to start. It's a bit of an introduction to all of the various topics that I'd like to talk about. But it's probably a good point at this juncture to go back to focusing on my training. And I'll leave this practice episode with a reference to what I might add as an image in post-production, if I ever do post-production on this, of the mind map. I don't like that term, but honestly, it's the term that other people use. I'll come up with a better term. But essentially, it's a diagrammatic network, or a networked diagram of terms and concepts that are related to each other, that form a representation of the deep and complex picture that is chronic pain in the human experience, ranging from external stimuli, perception of pain, to the neurological structures, to the purpose and aim of those structures in the effort to protect the human individual. So I'll show that diagram, and that'll be the basis and the reference point for basically everything else in this 8-part series. So thanks for listening. Tune in next time.